Welcome to Q&A. I'm your host, Marcia Boyles, and I'm delighted today to have the topic of memory and questions about memory. Our guest today is an old friend and fellow programmer, Kathleen Taylor, who is our social work manager here at Greenspring. So we're going to be starting, Kathleen, with some questions that I have put together based on questions that folks have asked me. Mm-hmm. So you and I have talked a bit about these. I'm not going to spring them on you today.
No, thank goodness.
Yes, that would seem a little unfair. So at any rate, we're going to talk about a number of things with memory, and we'll go through this list and see how far we get.
Sounds good.
So let's start with the first one, which is I have a friend here at Greenspring who's become increasingly forgetful. She is forgetting her keys, she's forgetting what day it is, she's forgetting appointments. In fact, recently she's been wearing unmatched shoes. Now my question is, what should I do about this? She doesn't have any family in this area, and what do I need to do at this point?
Well, I think a good place to start, which we always say, is just to let the social worker who's involved with that neighborhood know that you have a concern about your friend. Mm-hmm. And we
just go in and talk to her about what I'm seeing.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's exactly the right thing to do, especially because there's no family in the area.
Right.
Yeah. So once the social worker is aware, then she will go in and do an assessment. And make sure, that everything is either okay or that if there are things that we need to follow up on, we can do that. So this, just sort of to give a little bit of a rundown of what that process might look like, we would go in and we would meet with the resident and we would just ask the person questions about, how their normal day looks, where they might be having problems, that sort of thing. And usually we like to have a consult done by the physician. So we would perhaps recommend to the resident that she go visit her physician and make sure that everything is okay from a medical standpoint.
Now, let's stop there and let me ask you. It wouldn't matter whether she was using the medical center or not, just as long as it's her primary that she was consulting. Okay.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we know that there's risk factors associated with memory loss that have to do with physical illnesses. So we would want to have those all checked out before we went on in terms of the next steps of our assessment. So that would be the beginning. We would follow up with the person, continue to work with them. If there were any immediate needs that we could identify that might benefit from a connection to some of the resources that we have on campus, even if it were maybe just a home support aide or companion, that sort of thing, that might be something. What we're really wanting to do is make sure that from a activity of daily living standpoint, that person is supported.
All right. That would certainly make sense. And presumably then there is coordination between you and the medical person.
Right.
Okay, so that you would be in contact with that person and they with you.
Well, right.
We would move forward.
Yeah, we would. Normally we like to. We hope that our residents are using our medical center because just actually for that reason, to a certain extent, just to allow for easier, more effective coordination between all the different disciplines that are on campus. So say the person goes to the medical center and meets with their primary care physician. We would be able to let that physician know that there have been some concerns in terms of functioning, because that will give them the heads up that they need to maybe do more of an in-depth.
So you would alert them? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, that would make sense.
Yeah, and then we would coordinate them with the physician. We can do a MOCA, which we can talk about later, but
yes.
that's a test that we do that kind of gives us a range in terms of what that person's cognitive function is at that point in time. There might be an opportunity to do a speech consult as well, which also is cognitive functioning and adaptive kinds of measures that that person can take. So there's a few things that can be done from a sort of a diagnostic and then a accommodation kind of standpoint that we would maybe look at as well. But it's a holistic kind of approach, so we're really going to just look at trying to narrow down what the concerns are.
All right, so that's just the beginning of a whole
beginning.
process. Kathleen, this is a difficult question that I'm going to ask you here now, and I don't know how much detail you want to provide, but the question is, I now have come in and reported, let's say, to you, and you have been in contact with a medical center, and the two of you in the medical center are coordinating some kind of efforts on behalf of my friend. What I would like to know is, can I come back to you and say, Kathleen, what is going on with my friend? What are you doing for her?
Right, right. Yeah, and we have talked about this before in terms of how we balance the confidentiality and also the HIPAA restrictions.
Now tell us what HIPAA is. Remind us what HIPAA is.
Health Information Portability and Privacy Act. So that has to do with the specifics of somebody's health care, that we can't share that information with a friend, even if they're the most well-intentioned and caring person in the world. It's a law. The confidentiality is a little bit more gray area because that has to do with how much information we share, what that friend's need to know might be. And so if it's not absolutely restricted by the HIPAA requirements, then we may share a little bit more information in terms of being able to help, since you're a friend and a neighbor and maybe the only person that's really involved with her at this point in time. You sort of are, by default, her resource person. And
yes, and so it would be important for her health, my friend's health, maybe, for me to have some information.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, typically you're going to know what's going on pretty much. I mean, you already know that she's got a memory, that she's got a memory impairment, and you know that that she's been struggling. So just the idea that we would get some supports in place, but also since you are involved, to go ahead and provide that extra feedback if you notice that even though we put some supports in place, they don't maybe seem to be enough, that sort of thing. So that's important. I mean, we really do rely on people in the community to help be that safety net for our residents, but I think that the hard part is there just are a lot of restrictions in terms of the specifics of what we can share, but just the knowledge that we are involved, and we do welcome your input. If you're concerned and you want to be involved, then we welcome your input. We just might not be able to give you as much back as you would like to have.
For sure. Okay. All right. My second question is there a test given at Green Spring that lets me track my memory status from year to year? And if so, who gives it and how often?
Right. Well, that's when I referred to the MOCA.
Now, what is the MOCA?
It's the Montreal Cognitive Assessment Test. And we have been using that for quite a few years now. I can't remember exactly how many, maybe six years or so. When people move into Green Spring, that's something that we give, which kind of provides a benchmark or a baseline for cognition, so that can be helpful. And then if a person either has a curiosity about whether they've lost points, or if they might be having some functional difficulties that we want to be able to gauge, then that is a pretty easy way to do that. The score is 30. 30 is the maximum amount of points that you get on this tool. And then we're able to kind of calibrate, depending on that person's score, where they're at in terms of cognition. It's very sensitive to mild cognitive impairment. That was the intention of the tool when it was developed. So like things like short-term memory in particular is something that it really captures. And we know short-term memory is, you know, something that as you age, a lot of times that's sort of the first thing that becomes a bit of a problem. There's some visual spatial testing, some executive function, language. So there's a little bit of everything, but you can lose quite a few points just on short-term memory loss. So all of that to say that that's just one part of what we do in terms of sort of being able to calibrate where that person is from a cognitive standpoint, because functionality is really the thing that we look at.
How do you judge functionality?
Well, mostly by observation and interview process.
Do you have certain point? All right, so you're looking for certain things.
We are, and we do have a memory health consultation that social work provides to the medical center, but it's an assessment. It's a holistic assessment, so it talks about, you know, physical functioning, all of the different activities of daily life that people might do, from dressing to walking, all of the physical components, but then also mood, whether the person is getting out and about in the community, whether they have friends, whether they have a support network, all of those important facets of a person's life, we're able to really look into that, and that's really good information for the physician to have, because that's background information that when the resident goes in, if the doctor knows that there might have been some problems in those areas, then that gives them a better sense of where to go when they're doing their medical assessment.
All right, that would make sense. Do you actually give a score?
It's not a score. It's just being able to
Look at these various areas.
Find out where people are. It's for us as social workers, I mean, it's just kind of a normal part of our assessment, but
Okay.
be able to, we do like a little check sheet we can do,
Okay.
that we can then give to the physician.
All right, to go back to the MOCA, that is not going to be given automatically by anybody every year unless you ask for it. Is that the case?
Well, actually, some of the physicians, and I think we've had Dr. Bala talk about this before, will do that with their annual workup that they do.
Most of us are finding that they're not being given to us.
And that might be something that you might want to ask for.
That's what I was
that's
wondering,
something
whether that was
that can be done. We're also still that's sort of a work in process, because we're looking at whether if we have if the physicians coordinate with the social workers, we can do the MOCA ahead of the annual visit. That will, you know, free them up to do the more medical stuff. And also, the speech therapy is also available to do the MOCA. And that can be something that the physicians can do. If there's more complications that you might want a speech therapy consult for treatment, then that might be another direction. So there's a few different ways to go with that. But certainly if you can always come to your social worker.
I was going to say the social worker can do it too.
And we can do it. Yeah.
Okay, so it really behooves us, if we're concerned from year to year, to ask for it.
Yeah. If you want to know. All of us grew up getting grades, so I think people tend, what's my grade?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, well that's a good thing, and I think there's a certain comfort level in knowing that you may have passed every year.
That's true. Or you're holding your own anyhow. You've only lost
Holding
a point
your
or
own.
two.
Well, okay, there you go. Yes, as we age, I think that gets to be a good thing if we're holding our own.
Absolutely.
All right, my third question is, what are the greatest risk factors for dementia? And how many of us suffer from dementia in our demographic?
Okay, well, let me start first with risk factors. So the first, then the highest risk factor is simply age.
Okay.
So that means that as we get older, you know, we have more of a tendency to develop dementia.
All right, so at 80, we are going to have one risk factor and at 90 an entirely different risk factor. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing is certainly if you have any family history or if you have a genetic history, and now that we've identified the gene, what is it, APOE4, that people are doing testing to see whether they have the gene or not.
Are they doing testing?
But, I mean, that's a whole other, you know,
We'll have another show on that.
bunch of questions in
Yes.
terms of whether that's something that
Right.
people want to do.
It is not
need to
offered
do.
here.
No. I actually don't know where it's offered. I just know that it is possible to have testing. And but just because you carry the gene doesn't mean that you're going to get the illness. So that's
Well, and
another part of
are
the.
there other aren't there a couple of different genes that are potentially involved?
This is so new.
Yes.
All of this is
So
so
I-
new.
uh-huh.
So but I think, you know, the family history, you do see dementia through family, sort of a hereditary kind of thing. So that's an important factor, only just in terms of, you know, when we start talking about what's protective against dementia, that if you know that you have a family history, then you
Yes.
should focus
Yes.
on what you can do to protect yourself as much as possible.
So age and genetics.
Age and genetics, also sex, because we know that women have more of a tendency to develop dementia than men.
Is there have you seen any rationale for that? Why?
I've seen vagaries. I haven't actually seen specifics. So the one thing that you see is, well, women just live longer than men,
Right,
which
but it's-
makes sense.
It does, but it's more than that.
But it is more than that. And then it starts to get really kind of not specific, is it might be genetics, it might be life experiences, which we talk about.
Life experiences.
Yeah, well, either education or occupation.
All right.
So, I mean, that's
Oh.
another risk factor is, I think, an education of less than eight years of formal education is a risk factor for developing
years.
dementia.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
I know, it is. And then occupation, like if you've had like a higher skilled type of occupation, then that's also, I think that's more of a protective than a risk factor, but it does factor in, for sure.
Gosh, we women offered fewer opportunities.
I know.
And now we're being punished for it again.
I know, I hate that. I hate the way it sounds.
Yes.
And then I think the other thing that really is significant is just overall physical health, especially cardiovascular health. Because the other form of dementia other than Alzheimer's is vascular dementia, which is related to you know, how your cardiac health is. So definitely those are things that, some of those things we don't have control over, some of them we have a little bit better control over, but that's definitely one that if you're at risk for cardiac disease, you know, watch your diet, watch your exercise, do all the things that your doctor says.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you had asked me, and I wrote this down because you wanted a number, that there are over the age of 65, as of 2015, there are 5.1 million people diagnosed with Alzheimer's dementia.
What percentage of the population is
I don't know that, see? But of that group, 3.2 are women, so 2/3 are women.
Oh, 2/3.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah,
Oh my heavens. More than 5 million.
yeah, yeah. Though they do say, I mean, that sounds like a lot, but you're right. I don't know what the overall population in the United States is, but they still want to say that it's, you know, even though that sounds like a lot, that people don't, you know, that is not something that people should expect to do, is develop dementia. So,
Well, okay, we'll
relax on that.
We'll hold that good thought.
that's right.
I read someplace that as we age, and I believe it was over age 60 or 65, that every 5 to 6 years you double your chance of getting dementia.
development. Yeah, I read every decade, so.
Every decade. Oh, well,
Yeah.
this is
So close enough.
Yeah, close enough.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's scary to hear.
Isn't it though?
Yeah, but as we continue to have our conversation, I think that there's risks, and then there's also protective things. So we want to just be
Yes,
able to balance out
yes.
the risks with the protective mechanisms
Yes,
that we have
thank
control
you.
over.
We'll get into those. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. We don't want to despair here. All right. Well, the next question just feeds right into that.
Good.
What can I be doing here at Green Spring to keep my memory as strong as possible?
Yeah, luckily you are at
Here
Green
at Green
Spring,
Spring. Yes,
where
right.
there are so many things that are available, and just not specific to memory, because we'll talk about the different memory health and memory fitness things that we have
Yes.
going on. But again, exercise is so key. So you have a fitness center, you have the ability to walk all over campus and not have to go out. So if there's 2 feet of snow, you don't have to let that be an excuse.
And if you want to eat, you have to walk.
And if you want to eat, you have to walk, right? Which is good.
Yes.
And so exercise definitely, and all of the different, yoga and all of the other different kinds of things that you can do. There's just no excuse to not do that. So I would say that's supposed to be very good in terms of protection. The other thing is we have physicians right here on campus. So, those are your
Oh, all right.
those are your partners.
Easy access to.
Cardiovascular disease is huge in this demographic. So you really want to continue to partner with your doctor to make sure that that you can, follow whatever guidelines that they're putting forth. You got your ability to get lab work right here at the medical center. You can get information on diet and just all of the things that you need to do something for yourself. And then the other thing that we know, another thing that we know is protective as well, is staying engaged.
I was going to say sociability and engagement.
Socially
Yeah.
engaged, making friends, joining clubs, having hobbies, all of that. That's stimulating, cognitively stimulating, and emotionally nourishing. So those are all good things as well. And then as far as the actual specific to memory health kinds of things that we have on campus, twice a year we have our memory fitness classes. Which
Those are 12 weeks, 6 weeks?
6 weeks, twice a week classes. And we we usually try to maintain a class size of about 12, but we continue to be full, and people take them over again too.
Oh, do they?
So, and that's perfectly allowed. And then on opposite rotations, we have the brain train, which is going on now, which is a combination of physical exercise and mental aerobics.
Now that's fairly new.
That is.
Is it being offered now?
Yep, it's right now. That's 6.
Is it full?
It is. It's like that one is like, we'll take up to 40 people, and it's maxed out. And I'm hearing it's really, really good. But that combination of the the physical and the cognitive is really good for you.
And it sounds like fun.
And it's very much fun. And it also, yeah, you're right, it also has that social aspect as well, because 40 people, kind of just testing themselves and laughing at themselves sometimes, it's great. It's really good. We also, on a monthly basis, have the Mind Benders group.
Yes.
And
Now that's a resident group, right?
That's a resident group. That's sort of facilitated through social work, but
is it?
yeah, but it's really, I think there's probably about 20 people now that show up on at any given time. I can't remember the date, but but hopefully they'll put that up there somewhere.
Right.
That they just get a chance to again do different kinds of brain stretching activities, and also there's the social aspect, which is really so important.
I would think.
And periodically we'll have other kinds of events too, but and I definitely all of the different activities that we have on campus that people can get involved in, whether it's
All
musical,
220 of them or
200,
whatever.
however many,
yes.
whatever you love, do it. because it's going to be good for your
And
brain.
if it isn't here, you can start it.
Oh yeah, there's that too. Absolutely.
All right. Okay, well, that gives us an overview of the kind of things that are going on. An amazing amount of stuff.
Yeah.
It really is true. All right, now we're going to get into a very difficult term. What is neuroplasticity, and how is this involved in aging, in the
Yeah.
aging brain?
Right. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to continue to change and learn and adjust and adapt. Because historically, it was thought that the brain stopped growing in young adulthood. And so what we're finding out now is that, that the brain continues to be able to learn, to make new learning, to also reorganize.
New pathways.
Make new pathways, make new neurons actually, which is I think the most amazing thing, because I think that there was the thought that the neurons weren't created after a very young age.
Right.
But also to repurpose pathways, to adjust to maybe a trauma or a disease. Something I learned while I was researching this actually, which really kind of more defined plasticity, is that there's two different kinds of plasticity. So one is the functional plasticity, where that is the brain is able to move an action from a damaged part of the brain to an undamaged
to
part.
another.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and that's very cool. And then the structural plasticity is actually the new learning, where people are learning, creating actually new connections
pathways
and
or
new pathways.
strengthening existing pathways.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that's really, I mean, we talk about resilience, we talk about human resilience and our ability to adjust and adapt. This is brain resilience.
Yes.
And that is, so when we talk about, when we talk about being able to do things that are protective, it's really things that are going to help take advantage of this plasticity to develop the other term that we were going to talk about at some point, which is cognitive reserve.
Yes. Yeah, I think this whole notion that if there is a part of the brain that is not functional or not as functional, that function can be taken over by a different part of the brain. And we've always, I think, conceived of the brain as being so specialized in terms of what it controls. So that really apparently is a kind of a new idea.
I think it's newish.
Newish.
I mean, I think we've known it for a long time in terms of people when they have strokes.
Well, strokes, that's right.
And that, but I mean, that a lot of times that can really impact a significant amount of the brain. So that ends up being, training or activating another part of the brain to compensate. So, so I think that we're now looking at that in terms of how that works. If you have dementia, if a part of your brain is being affected because of the dementia, then how can we, figure a workaround in your brain? And a lot of that is just exposure to different kinds of experiences that are gonna create those new pathways.
Are you suggesting with dementia that there can be retraining?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, there is the capacity for new learning up to the point where the clinical progression is so significant that it's not possible.
All right, but in early stages.
Yeah, and you don't want to. I mean, just from a clinical standpoint, we don't want to rule out that possibility because there's different approaches. I mean, that's why I'm so in love with creative art therapies, because the music and the art and the dance movement activate the brain in another way, and that can stimulate learning even when maybe language is lost, for example. That can stimulate a different kind of response. So different ways.
All right, I hear you. I hadn't really thought about it like that. So, okay, all right, that's good.
Yeah.
All right, here's a totally different question. I notice that when I am under stress or I can't sleep for several days in a row or more, I start having difficulty with both my memory and my thinking. And these difficulties disappear when my sleep or my stress level is normalized. So my question to you is is this kind of a normal situation, and are there other states or other problems or issues that cause temporary loss of cognition and memory?
That's such a good question.
Well, thank you. It was a long one.
I know, but it is a good one. That I sort of talk about in terms of a cognitive interference. There's something that's
Cognitive interference.
yeah.
Okay.
So stress in particular is something that kind of gets in between you and your ability to think as clearly as you
Think
want
very
to.
clearly,
Yeah.
yes.
And I just think like lack of sleep is another indicator of stress. That your body is stressed, your mind is
Yes.
stressed. But it's what happens is, one thing it does when you're under stress is that you're not able to focus on your external environment.
Exactly.
You know, so like I lost my keys. You know, I can't find my keys. Well, it's because your mind wasn't with you when you were
Wasn't engaged.
when
right.
you were putting the keys
Right,
down where you
exactly.
put them, because you were probably internally focused, ruminating on whatever was bothering you at the time, that sort of thing, and so you lost your focus. The other thing that happens is stress just takes up a lot of energy. So you don't have. I mean,
So
we
it's
all
physical and mental.
It's physical to the extent, I think the stress reaction, I mean, we've talked about this before, is that you have the cortisol.
The
and
fight or flight.
Of the fight or flight. But with the fight or flight, you are really cut off from your problem solving and your executive function. You're not in your prefrontal lobe anymore. You're in your brainstem, which means that you've lost a lot of your ability to think. Use language even, regulate yourself emotionally. Those are all things that if you're under stress and you're in that fight or flight mode, you are not able to think as effectively. So being able to figure out...
This is not one's imagination.
No, this is physiologically happening for sure. And it's not healthy. So it's something that you want to get out of as soon as possible, and that, you know, if there's sleep problems, you know, but definitely trying to figure out what's stressing you and figuring out whether you need to do some breathing exercises or
Right.
come to your social worker, will help
Right.
you with that.
All right.
But stress is not healthy, and it's not good in any number of different ways, physically, cognitively, emotionally, all of the above.
Yes. Okay. Do I remember that you mentioned that depression also causes those same symptoms, really?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and that's what we talk about sometimes when we say pseudo-dementia. If somebody is depressed to the extent that, again, it's the same kind of things happening, loss of focus, because you're internally focused, and then also energy. You don't have the energy. So dementia or depression is something that you really want to be screened for as well.
All right. So that has serious ramifications.
Absolutely.
All right. So all of those are temporary, pseudo, as you're saying, but they're temporary.
They can be temporary if you deal with them.
All right.
Otherwise, they can become chronic.
All right. And okay. That certainly makes sense.
Yeah, but they're not dementia. They're not dementia per se, but they are gonna make you feel like maybe something's going on.
Oh yes, I
Yeah.
think one becomes very aware
Yeah.
of one's limitations in situations like that. Kathleen, I see we have gotten through exactly half of our list, and I see that our time is up.
Wow, it went so fast.
It did indeed. This has been very helpful. I can't tell you how many of these questions are really universal here at Green Spring, and I think this is going to be very helpful for folks. I think what we'll do is plan to have another Q&A program and answer the last half of this list, if
Sounds
you're
good.
agreeable.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, terrific. Thank you for coming today.
Thanks for having
the
me.
discussion.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next month.